Okay, I'm going to argue that the long tail is a lie, or at least mostly a lie. So the long tail is a book that was written by Chris Anderson. I think it came out in 2006. Yeah, I just looked. It came out in 2006. And basically what it posits is that you have a long curve. You have a curve of engagement in sales or in art and things like that. And what he is arguing is that the area under the tail of that curve, out of the top 10, is much larger than the area of that upper bit. And that in the future, this is 2006 again, so we're in that future, what's going to happen is that more and more of the artists and products in that tail are going to be surfaced to people who would enjoy them, and they're going to do better than they would have done before. So the idea being that you're a musician and you make a very specific kind of heavy metal music based upon goat noises. You used to have a tiny little audience, and now you can reach a larger audience. People who would be interested in that can have the very clever recommendation engines that have been created recommend this music to them, they'll be exposed to it, and you'll do even better. But I would actually argue that the opposite has happened. The recommendation engines have actually started reinforcing that head and made the head even sharper. When you look at games, which is something that I'm the most familiar with, what you see is within a genre, the number one game sells huge copies. The number two game sells a lot less than that, usually less than half. Number three, less than half that. And it just descends incredibly quickly. The tail still exists. If you make an RPG that's about Regency politics and robot hairstyles, there's an audience there, but that audience can be measured in the hundreds, possibly the thousands. Not the tens of thousands, not the hundreds of thousands. So while the promise was recommendation engines like Steam would be able to figure out that people liked Dragon Age and they like Regency politics and recommend your Regency politics robot hairstyle game to them, what actually seems to happen instead is you like Dragon Age, I'm going to recommend Skyrim to you. You like Skyrim, I'm going to recommend Witcher to you. You like Witcher, how about Skyrim or Dragon Age? And it becomes this self-reinforcing net of the top games reinforcing the top games. You can see this if you wander around on Amazon for a little while looking at books. Sure, start with Stephen King and then go to You Might Also Like, and then just follow that for as long as you want. Chances are you're not going to get a mid-tier or bottom-tier recommendation from the recommendation engine. What's going to happen is the Stephen King is going to lead to more Stephen King, and then it's going to lead to John Grisham, and then John Grisham to more John Grisham, to back to Stephen King. You may never even get out of there. You're just going to go between the best-selling books forever and never get out of there. So does that mean it's hopeless for the mid-range of creator? I mean, what I would say is in most industries, the middle is very unstable. The best, the top tier, they sell really well. And the bottom tier can sell okay if they are keeping their budget in mind, let's say. Maybe okay isn't even good enough, but it might be okay. But what's really unstable is this mid-tier where you are making a game and you need it to sell 300,000, a million, 2 million to be profitable. That's really hard because that's big enough that you're outside of Kickstarter range. You're outside of just appealing to a very specific niche who's going to come looking for you. And you're needing to draw in this larger audience of people who would be interested in your niche but aren't necessarily aware that you even exist. So unfortunately, the future that was promised in 2006, and when I read that book, I was super excited about this future, doesn't seem to have come true in any media. You have the biggest getting bigger. The tail is there, but it's incredibly thin out to infinity, with just infinity creators each getting a tiny bit of attention. And what seems to have died is the middle, where they are games that have an audience, have the potential to reach a larger audience, not a huge one. That seems to be what has ceased to be. So what do we do about it? I don't know. Honestly, I think that maybe we should be pushing for changes to the recommendation engines, but the reality is the recommendation engines are designed to try to get you to buy something. They're not trying to get you the best match for what you might want. One of the dangers of doing what Chris Anderson is talking about is it's really hard for me to know exactly what you might like. If you like this goat bleeding heavy metal music, it's hard for me to know that the reason you like it is because you really like goats. And what I need to do is recommend other farmyard related music. Is it that, or is it that you like this specific sound or this specific kind of metal? Much easier for me to just say, this is metal. I'm going to recommend the biggest metal band to you because chances are that's going to be a better hit. While if I took a chance and recommended something more out there to you, it might be something that you would enjoy more. It also has a higher probability of being something that you might enjoy less. And here's where I think Chris Anderson makes the mistake that is sort of coming to fruition now. If you assume that people have infinite time, that they can consume an infinite amount of music or media or whatever, then this makes sense that you can find things that they would like and they would consume all things that they would like, and then the consumption would rise and more of these niche things would be consumed. But in a world of finite time, that's not actually the case. And the approach that a lot of these platforms have taken is that I don't need to get you the best match to your taste. I just need to get you a good enough match for you to consume something else. But here's my plea to the platform holders. I actually think that that's a short-term way of thinking about this. If all I do is get you a good enough match time after time, then sure, in the short term, that's going to get me to consume more. It's going to make line go up. But I feel like in the longer term, it's going to degrade people's trust in the platform. If you're just barely crossing the threshold of my consumption, I feel like we're building up this resentment towards the platform. And in the long term, it's going to result in people potentially rejecting your platform completely. So while a more sophisticated recommendation engine might be higher risk, I think that in the long term, it would pay off by increasing player engagement or consumer engagement in your platform, understanding them better, giving them something that's better for them, healthier for them maybe even, and therefore allowing a healthier, longer term relationship between the platform and the person on the platform. But unfortunately, I think that in the West right now, we're so focused quarter to quarter, year to year, that these longer term thought processes are often not considered at all. And so we make these decisions that are around keeping you watching for another 5 minutes. And don't worry about the fact that in 2 years, you might burn out on the platform completely. And I wish that we could look longer term, think about the health of players, the health of people on social media, the health of all of these things, take a longer term view, and now suddenly those more sophisticated recommendation engines that actually could bring a true long tail to fruition start to make a lot more sense. Maybe as we get more neural nets scrubbing people's buying history, some of this stuff that's talked about in the book can come into being, but honestly, I suspect that all we're going to see is even further reinforcement of, you like this, how about Stephen King? You like this, you know what, Stephen King. Because I think what you'll see is buying patterns, people who buy the niche stuff often engage in the mainstream stuff as well, So the mainstream stuff just ends up being the safe bet, even when the AI are scrubbing your behavior. It's not the best. It does mean that the game industry, YouTube, book writing are all at danger of getting to the point where all that's left are a few superstars and everyone else is just a hobbyist who can't even remotely make a living at that. And if you get into that state, you run the risk of those superstars falling away and no one else having been in the wings being ready to come up and take their place. So you can end up with entire media potentially becoming stale, becoming worn out. Special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you are interested in becoming a member, there's a link down in the description. We also have super thanks turned on the channel, so if you just want to throw a little money my way, there's a button down below somewhere to let you do that. What do you think? Do you think that The Long Tail is a fiction, or do you see the middle rising out of the noise as we get into more and more sophisticated recommendation technologies? Let me know down in the comments. I will see you again soon. Thank you.